It's time for Elko Live today with the Wednesday County Update. We appreciate our guest in studio. Elko County District Attorney Tyler Ingram is joining us today for an update and local District Attorney news and happenings, and of course the latest on our Child Advocacy Center. Tyler, it's always a pleasure to sit across from you, and thank you for being here today.
Yeah. Hello, everyone, and thanks, Lori. Appreciate it.
Yes, it is another day, a beautiful spring day here in the Great Basin, and it always gives us that feeling of hope and optimism. And I know you just came from our newest division of the Elko County District Attorney's Office, if you will, and that is the Child Advocacy Center. So I thought we could spend some time, a little update today on that.
Yeah, it's been a passion project of mine for quite a while. Not just mine, a lot of people, but I did just come from there. Obviously, we are fully operational. It was a fairly easy process getting that open. What wasn't so easy was making sure that we had all the proper funding in place to provide all the direct services that a CAC is supposed to provide. But fortunately, in the last month or two, maybe a little bit longer, we now have all the direct services that a typical CAC would provide. We have contracts with forensic interviewers and contracts with victim advocates, as well as one Spanish-speaking victim advocate, which has already come in handy with at least one big case. So that's been wonderful to have. Of course, we have our medical team in place to provide the forensic medical examinations to reassure that a child is healthy, despite what may have happened to them. And again, one thing that I'm most proud of with our Child Advocacy Center is our mental health services that we provide. Nevada Gold Mines funded that completely, and we provide on-site mental health services with professionals, again, on-site 4 days a week for 5 hours at a time. So we're scheduling counseling appointments during that time frame. And we also use some of that Nevada Gold Mine money, set it aside for emergency situations for after hours in case a child is in crisis and needs some help.
Well, that was a huge contribution, and we're going to talk more about some of those contributions that are coming in too from regional partners as we're visiting with Tyler Ingram. So far, since the center has been open, Tyler, can you think of some prosecution in particular? Obviously, we're not asking you unless you feel so compelled to talk about particular cases, but has this led to successful prosecution and getting some families whole again and getting some perpetrators, getting justice for those families?
Yeah, it certainly contributed to the efficiency of the prosecution. I don't know of a case off the top of my head that has gone all the way through trial since we've opened our facility. But at a minimum, we've certainly provided a more child-friendly environment for them to go through the process that they would otherwise have to go through at some strange place or be interviewed in an uncomfortable place, things like that. So from that standpoint, it's already been a huge success. I can talk about some rough estimates on the services we've provided. I believe since we opened and we're fully operational as a CAC in that building, from around September through January, our mental health professionals did 99 therapy sessions with children. And of course, there's been quite a bit of time since January, so that number has gone up. And yesterday, when I was talking to our multidisciplinary team coordinator, she did not look up the actual numbers, but she thinks that we've done north of 60 child interviews since we've opened our doors. So those numbers are pretty astonishing and really, I guess, solidify the need for these services here in Elko County.
And Tyler, we do know that this need is not just local. These are not just Elko area children in particular, but you are relying on your regional partners and assisting them in this.
We are relying on our regional partners. So our Child Advocacy Center is designed to really provide services to children from anywhere, even in the world, if they're located here or need these services while here. But we're really focused on Elko County, Eureka County, White Pine County, and Lander County. And interestingly enough, there is a Nevada law, it's a statute, that requires counties, to the extent that money is available, to make these services that a CAC offers accessible to their children. And so long before this statute was in place, our counties that surrounded us were very supportive of the CAC. and they've provided money long before they were required to by statute. Now, I'm not suggesting that they're required to give us money because the statute exists, but they are contributing money to make these services available to their children. White Pine County has now provided $200,000 to us. Eureka County is north of $300,000, and the majority of that is to direct services. I say majority because the balance of what's not going to direct services went to architecture and design for our facility.
So those are annual contributions or to date?
Those are to date. Annual contributions so far have been $100,000 per fiscal year from each of those counties.
Well, that is significant and will continue, I'm sure. As you're out working on, you're also our district attorney, so you're basically operating two divisions now within the district attorney's office. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, actually three, but child support included. But fortunately, we have such amazing leadership outside of me that take care of a lot of things that they're better at than I am. So.
Well, and you obviously have confidence, and great leadership means having the right people in place, too, so that you can rely on them and they rely on you. That sounds like a pretty fair relationship, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we want to talk about what imperils children. It was a bit shocking. Yesterday I read a story about a 10-year-old Utah girl who was lured from California by a man. I believe that was the situation, or she might have been from California. Anyway, she was 10 years old. She was lured by a 30-year-old man online who he was apprehended, and she was recovered and returned to her family. Yes, it was in California. And he was able to do this through social media, Tyler. And he had told this girl, he gave her a ring on the ride from California as they were driving through Utah. I think they were intending to get to Colorado or something. But he said he was going to marry her, a 10-year-old girl. So, and this was through social media. So how do we protect our children from this kind of interaction?
I think the first step is recognizing that it actually happens right here in our hometown, in Elko and all over Elko County. This is not a California or a Utah thing or any other state. It's happening locally. We see those cases far too often. There is a crime against luring a child, and we are charging that too frequently. So I guess, again, the first step is recognizing that this is our problem as well, not just everybody else's problem. And Lori, I've been on your show several times, and we've talked about similar issues. And as a father myself, I think it's difficult, and sometimes I struggle as a father to strike the balance between being the parent and not being overbearing. But when it comes to these types of crimes, I think it's fair to say that it's safer to side on the overbearing side. Not over the top, but paying attention to what your children are doing, monitoring their social media activity, monitoring their use of the phone, because it's not just the internet that people are using to lure or solicit children. It's also just text messaging. That can be a big one. The exchange of explicit images between children and between a child and an adult is very, very common, and it's an issue.
We know it's an issue, as you said, here in Elko. Our city police chief, Tyler Troughton, wanted to talk about this, and he'll be on a future program because sexting is what it's called, exchanging those photos. And then the children are quickly put in a position where they're full of shame, they feel at fault, and then they're manipulated to do even more harm. Isn't that right? That's
exactly right. We're seeing that a lot. We're seeing it child on child, and child adult, and even adult, to where the perpetrator and the victim are both adults. It's something that's hard to fathom for me because it's happening to children at such a young age, and that's probably a product of me being raised in a time when we didn't have cell phones. I think I got my first cell phone when I was maybe 17 or 18 years old, somewhere in there, and it just wasn't a thing back then. So now, as a prosecutor, seeing these cases come through our office where an 8 or 9-year-old has their own telephone, and I'm not suggesting that's a bad idea, but to be left unchecked and them to be able to have the access to send images or receive images is it's tough to take.
So if someone detects this or suspects this, we're talking with our district attorney, Tyler Ingram, what is the first best thing to do? I can say that, based on another experience, Tyler, that it's not always good to confront the child, right? I mean, that can make it worse. There's something else that parents need to do first.
I think a natural reaction, if you found out that your child was engaged in something like this, would be to discipline your child. Or maybe you would let your emotions take over as opposed to taking a step back and thinking about it from a common sense perspective. And that is, if you lash out at this child, almost guarantee that they're going to close down. They're just going to completely shut down and not be willing to cooperate, not only with the parent, but with our Child Advocacy Center to try to investigate the issue and hopefully have a successful prosecution. So I would suggest is not acting like you're going to discipline your child. Take a step back and call law enforcement. Law enforcement will then reach out to the Child Advocacy Center, and the CAC would take it from there.
They do have investigators, right, Tyler, who can actually take the phone and with the parent's permission, they can conduct the investigation electronically.
Easily, yeah, the technology is there. We have at our CAC, because we're fortunate to have such great partnerships with the Elko City Police Department and the Elko County Sheriff's Department, we have full-time detectives that are doing nothing but these types of cases, and they're operating out of our CAC. And they have access to the latest and greatest technology to be able to not only get into a phone that's password protected, but to also then extract all the information that we need for the investigation and a successful prosecution.
And we know, Tyler, that parents can do this clear up through the age of 17, right? I mean, if that child lives within your home and they have a phone or a device, I mean, you can take physical possession of that device.
Yeah, I mean, you're not an adult in Nevada until you hit 18. So that is correct.
Okay, so if anybody listening has a concern about the kind of activity that might be going on using phones. And the other thing that's important to know, Tyler, is not only do we have victims here, but we have perpetrators. And sometimes the perpetrators are children. You mentioned child on child.
Yeah. Yep. I don't have the exact numbers for you, but we see that maybe just as often as we see an adult on a child type situation. And a lot of it has to do with, well, I guess it runs the gamut of types of crimes, but everything from the harassing text messages or the exchange of nude photos between children, the bullying between children or groups of children. We see it all. And you're exactly right, Lori. We have just as many perpetrators here as we do victims.
So if a parent also has that concern that their child might be involved in a bullying or a harassment type of activity, they may be hesitant to take the phone, to take it to investigators because they are concerned about the type of punishment the child could face.
Yeah, that's always a concern is, what part did my child play in this situation? And the child may tell the parent one thing, but maybe the truth is something a little bit different. So I think any parent, even me, would be a little bit hesitant. But really, if we are not concerned, at least as a district attorney, we're not concerned with prosecuting a child who made a mistake. We're really concerned with prosecuting the core of the situation, the person who's truly responsible, the orchestrator, the leader, things like that. Because oftentimes we see a case where a victim may have played some role, but criminally it doesn't make any sense to prosecute that person. It's a very difficult explanation, and it's a thing that I think about almost constantly while I'm reviewing these cases. But yeah.
Well, Tyler Ingram is our guest today. He's our Elko County District Attorney, and we do know that you had just mentioned briefly that sometimes laws complicate this process, and there is one in particular that your office is looking at right now regarding child pornography. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so our Nevada child pornography statute uses the word any, A-N-Y, which our Supreme Court has interpreted to mean that generally, if a person is found to be in possession of, let's take 1,000 child pornography images, that we are limited to prosecuting them for one count as opposed to 1,000 counts, which would obviously expose them to much more time in prison or much more punishment in general. So a change that I would like to see, and we're going to work on this the next session. I say we, I don't know who's going to join me, but I'll find them. And we're going to work on getting that language modified so that we can have more teeth in our child pornography statutes.
And by looking at even our local arrest, Tyler, it's a concern because do we have enough jail space, frankly, for some of this? Because if you're investigating on average 20 or 30 cases of suspected child sexual assault or physical abuse every month, there's got to be a change in our society to deal with this. We have to acknowledge this.
We have to acknowledge it first. I don't know the solution to it. I guess my prosecutor heart says people who sexually abuse a child just need to go away forever. But we know that's not always reality, especially with our ever-changing laws. But we do need to recognize that it's an issue. And I can say that, most child sexual abuse cases are very serious felonies. Most of them are Category A felonies. That's the most serious type of felony that we have in Nevada. And those cases don't go from investigation to prosecution within weeks. Sometimes it takes up to 2 years to finally not only get the investigation completed, but also take it to trial. So it's not as if, we're stacking the jail with 20 inmates at a time because that's the number of investigations that we did at our CAC. It's a revolving door, and it takes a long time to get these through the channel.
Well, would you say that pornography in general is a problem, Tyler? We know that certain types of pornography is legal and protected under the First Amendment, and the distribution and dissemination of that is something that adults can be involved in, but we do see it as a problem in some families in our community. We
do, and I'm not an expert on this subject. There are people who dedicate, years and years of research to the effects of pornography. But from my own personal experience being a prosecutor for 13 years, I can tell you that a lot of the time when we see child pornography, somebody started off with regular adult pornography and then transitioned to something different and something far more illegal.
Well, we will transition from this topic, but just one more question, because we do see this often reflected in the arrest or the investigation by a district attorney, and that is that spouses often get arrested as well, Tyler. And I don't know if you want to reflect on that, or if it's a case of someone enabling someone else, or if you had any opinion on that.
I think the overwhelming majority of our cases, let me back up a little bit, Lori. The type of crimes like child sexual abuse and child pornography, those aren't necessarily crimes that people are committing in public. They keep it very, very secret. And most of the time, the spouse of the perpetrator is really oblivious to what is happening. And I don't think it's on purpose. I think that the perpetrator has done such a good job at covering their tracks that the spouse really has no, way of knowing that this was happening. Now, we have examples right here from Elko County where the spouse absolutely did know what was happening and was likely even contributing to it. But again, the overwhelming majority of cases, it's unknown to the other spouse.
All right. So just know that there are protections in place for families, and that the goal would be to, continue beyond, obviously, that prosecution of that individual who's responsible. But the goal is not to tear families apart. We have lots of different agencies and collaborators working on these issues.
Exactly. Actually, what a CAC is actually designed to do is not necessarily the prosecution or investigation of criminal cases. That's secondary. The overall goal is to make a child whole again, or as whole as we possibly can make them after what happened. And an important component of that is the aftercare. After the trial is done, after the perpetrator is in prison, what services can we provide to a child to make sure they continue to heal?
Tyler Ingram is our Elko County District Attorney, and he's our guest here on the radio today. So we're talking about, among other issues, the new Child Advocacy Center, which is helping families heal in our communities. And we did want to mention that there are several partners. A Committee Against Domestic Violence comes to mind, but there are plenty of agencies that are relying on the Advocacy Center and working hard to, as you said, complete this mission to be successful.
It's been wonderful seeing the support that we get from not only the people in this community, but the organizations like you just mentioned. Our law enforcement's been wonderful, CADV, DCFS. We've all come together for a common goal. We don't always see eye to eye on everything in this world, but we see eye to eye when it comes to helping the children. And it's just been so amazing to see that come together.
So there will be a special summer event, at least something that you're looking at, kind of working on some plans so the community can again come together to help support you?
Yeah, very tentative plans right now. We'll solidify this here shortly. But we want to hold at least one summer event to invite families, not necessarily families who are victims of abuse, but we'll have a sign-up sheet, likely at Boys and Girls Club, where families can sign up for a free event at our CAC, where the children can come and do some arts and crafts. We'll serve some food and probably watch a movie in our courtyard.
You really want it to be that family-friendly place. It's beautifully situated in the main city park area, and soon there'll be construction on a brand new Elko City swimming pool and combination recreation center. You couldn't ask for a better location, really, Tyler.
It's an amazing location. Yeah, we're so blessed to have that.
Mm-hmm. Because you do want children to see it and to be aware that it is a place to help children and to help families and not be fearful. That's why it was created?
That is exactly why it was created. It's a child-friendly environment, but we believe as a CAC that we need to let people know that these services exist, because if they know they exist, they're more likely to take advantage of those services. And having a building that's as beautiful as that one is, and maybe I'm a little biased, but I think it's a beautiful building, in the area where it's at is key to it being visible to families, and they know that they can come to us for help.
Thanks, Tyler, for the update on the Child Advocacy Center. Now we want to shift a little bit and talk more about some of the things in your office with your district attorney's hat and how prosecution is going, how the budget, staffing, things like that are going right now. If you have a summary for us.
Yeah, it's a busy time of year with budgets. We just completed our budget meetings. The actual DA criminal side of the budget is fairly flat. We're not asking for any additional positions. We did voluntarily forego filling one position last year to offset some increases for salaries. And we've asked that we be able to fill that position this time. So I guess that would technically be an increase in the overall budget from last year, but it's a position that was already budgeted. We have if we get that position, we'll have 2 openings for deputy district attorneys. Those have traditionally been very difficult to fill. We've had that opening for months and months, and we've had 1 or 2 applications and no successful interviews. So that part's been a little frustrating. That's certainly a downside for not only me, but all of our other deputy DAs who have to bear the load that another attorney would have if we had that position filled. But they're doing an amazing job at keeping up on the number of cases. I haven't checked in a little bit, but I think our attorneys are somewhere between 300 and 500 cases apiece that they have on their caseload. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily doing something with each case every single day or even every week, but it's a case nonetheless that they're responsible for.
Yeah, there are several ongoing investigations as well, as local law enforcement is busy. We haven't never had a combined show with you and the law enforcement, but obviously that's something we could do in the future, Tyler, because people do need to understand how closely these agencies work together. So those are some strengths with the personnel that you do have, and I know that you're a district attorney that does respond directly to people sometimes, if it's required, to criticism or to perceived weaknesses in the community, and I wanted to make sure you had an opportunity to set the record straight.
Yeah, I've reached out to several people. I've invited a lot of people to come in and meet with me. It's usually a social media post where they are critical of a job that we did, and I'll invite them to come talk to me about it. But very few have actually taken me up on that invitation. The people that have, though, it's been a wonderful conversation. They come in, they're respectful, they give me their point of view, and I give them my point of view. And sometimes I give them the actual facts. Not sometimes, I always give them the actual facts, but they're always facts that they weren't aware of. So I think that what I would like the community to know is that, at least from my perception, they see that somebody was arrested for a crime. Very, very hideous crime. And that it's as simple as they should be locked up. As if there's not this huge process in between, as if there's not laws, as if we can just, wave a magic wand and send somebody off to prison. One of our frustrations, which we oftentimes can understand why this happens, but in a victim crime, a victim can change their mind very quickly about the level of cooperation that they want to give us. In a lot of circumstances, without a victim's cooperation, the success that we'll have in prosecution is diminished tremendously. So there's so many things that can happen between the time of arrest and the time of trial that the general public doesn't know about. They don't know about the domestic violence victim that came in and wrote us a 2-page letter that said, I made all this up. This actually didn't happen. Now that's a letter that we have to turn over to defense counsel, and that really, again, diminishes our chances of a successful prosecution.
That victim may have, may have bruises. There may be obvious evidence when law enforcement has to go through a process when they show up to a scene. They don't just automatically arrest people anymore. They're evaluating. They conduct lethality surveys. Yeah. And the reason that this happens, Tyler, is because this victim may be dependent on the suspect for his or her very livelihood and that of her children and her pets.
Exactly. We see that a lot. There are so many reasons why a victim would choose to be uncooperative. And maybe that's too strong of a word, but I think it's the best to describe the situation. You're exactly right. They have no place to go. The house that they live in is owned and financed by the defendant. The pets is a big one that probably most people don't think about. I know that you do because of your role at CADV, but they don't want to leave their pet, and I can't blame them. I think pets are amazing. The thought of leaving my dog behind is, that's not okay with me. So you can imagine that would pull at their heartstrings and may cause them to recant or downplay the situation. And you mentioned bruises. Bruises are certainly evidence that we can point to say that something happened, or injuries. But sometimes when a victim recants, they will come in and they will write a letter to us and say that, yes, he did cause these bruises or she caused these bruises, whatever the case may be, but I was the one who hit them first. So then that turns into a justifiable battery incident as opposed to an unlawful battery incident. So again, just because somebody is arrested for domestic violence and just because the victim has bruises doesn't mean that we are absolutely going to get a conviction.
Well, Tyler, as always, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Wide-ranging conversation. Anything that we left out that might be pertinent to what you're working on or that you want folks to know about from your perspective, from your office?
I think I've said this many times on your show, Lori, but if anybody has any questions about what we do or why we do it, just reach out to me. I respond to everybody. I don't think I've ever ignored anything.
I don't think so. Absolutely. ElkoCountyNV.net, and you have your very own tab there on the Elko County website. We appreciate your being on the program today.